The 1992 Badminton Horse Trials for the Mitsubishi Motors Trophy was to be a truly great event. It was a prelude to the Olympic Games in Barcelona and drew an international field, as many of these competitors were hoping to prove their worthiness to their respective selectors. So it was 82 horses that came before the grand jury over the 2 days. The grand jury, headed by Captain the Honourable Patrick Connolly-Carew from Ireland, Ben Springorum from Germany, and Nanni Granolo from Italy, the same jury that will be officiating in the Barcelona Olympics. A chilly, cold but quiet morning opened the scene, and Lucinda Murray with Arctic Goose making the very best of her opportunity. Less pressure, and Lucinda able to get the very best out of this horse that has really caught the eye of the selectors, one of the younger generation making their way. It was very obvious from the start the judges were looking for free forward movement and accurate tests. And this was very much highlighted in the early marks that Lucinda was recording. For a Thursday, quite a few people, although a lot of empty stands, more colourful than normal this year. But no time for Lucinda to reflect on that. And so from a chilly morning to a windy, bright afternoon, and one of the stars of the sport, very much one of the favourites for the title. Mary Thompson on King William, the British Open champion, already placed second and third at Badminton, and for many the favourite to take the title. They both look absolutely composed and relaxed. Just take a look at this free walk, a picture of total relaxation, but at the same time giving the lovely free walk that will gain the high marks. Mary Thompson, a former pupil of the great Sheila Wilcox, who won this title 3 times, and very much in Sheila's mode, extremely determined. Again, an accurate test that's so pleasing to the eye, moves nicely into the working canter to the extended canter, beautifully balanced, stumbles, but again, quickly get their composure back. And although they'll lose a mark or two, it certainly won't be many. That little stumble very much reflected how Mary has grown up as an international competitor. In no way did it fluster her. And once again, a lovely transition into a free-flowing extended canter, which typified Mary's performance, a commanding performance that put them into the lead on 42.2. Australia have got a great record at badminton, having twice won the title in the 50s with Laurie Morgan and Bill Roycroft. And they certainly are beginning to put forward a young, promising team for the Olympics. And Matt Ryan would certainly be one of them. A very talented family. Matt, who has a brother also ridden for Australia in the 3-day event world, and a mother who has represented Australia in the pure dressage world. A very elegant seat, riding a part warm blood, which be regarded as very unusual for the Australians. A big horse that moves well, ridden very accurately, and certainly caught the eye of the dressage judges. Matt, one of the many riders who has spent time in Great Britain, benefiting from the experience of very regular competition. And he really looks now a very, very capable rider. Another proficient test that puts him right amongst the leaders at the end of the first day's dressage. So things looking very close, but it was Mary Thompson's performance that really caught the eye and established her a big lead at the end of the first day. Well, there was a very fresh, new look to the event this year due to the new sponsorship of the Colt Car Company, a British company who've added the Mitsubishi name to the Badminton Trials. Besides a fabulous new trophy, the prize money was increased, with the winner this year receiving £20,000. David O'Connor from the United States of America would very much like to have his hands on the large first prize, but his real dream is a ticket to Barcelona. A very talented rider who very often under pressure hasn't produced his best, but 1992, with the guidance of Lars Cederholm, sees him a very, very determined young man. Wilton Fair, not one of the youngest competitors, but still looking very agile and at the same time very correct in all his movements and paces. The windy day increasing the pressure, a larger crowd, but David certainly up to the occasion, providing one of the best tests that he's ever ridden. Finishing on a score of 44, just 2 marks behind the leader King William. And if David O'Connor had something to prove, so did Vicky Latter. For New Zealand 2 years ago, she gave up her legal profession to concentrate on an Olympic spot. Things hadn't gone too well for Vicky in 1991, but she spent the winter polishing up her performance, and this was the occasion when it had to really prove the point. And despite the pressures, Vicky Latter too looking very relaxed, and one of the classiest horses in the eventing world, provided a polished and very good test to watch. Very little tension, and again accurate, moving forward in a lovely outline. Important that the outline is maintained throughout the test. A test that's been around for a couple of years now, and the rider's really beginning to make it look what it should be as part of the first test. One of discipline, one of control, accuracy, and giving this delightful picture. So from Vicky Latter and New Zealand, finishing on 51.4 penalties, to the former world and European champion, Ginny Leng. Unusual to think that Ginny could be put under pressure, but after a lean year for her, this was the occasion that she had to prove that she was as good, if not better, than ever. A tremendous air of anticipation around the ring really meant that Ginny came in with an atmosphere bursting at the seams. And indeed, Crafty, looking absolutely fit to run for his life, found the occasion quite difficult to cope with. Not quite so relaxed as some of the previous tests we'd seen, but Ginny, with all her skill, able to contain him without making any real mistakes. But as you can see, without quite the same flowing free forward movement. The team behind Jenny don't leave a stone unturned. And you can see Crafty just wanting to really burst out and do perhaps a little that he shouldn't, but Ginny contains him. Although perhaps not one of their best performances, certainly put them in a position to launch their 1992 badminton campaign, a title that of course they had won back in '89. So the dressage results provide a fascinating situation. Mary Thompson, perhaps the champion-elect, with several of the top names close in behind her, all to play for on cross-country day. Well, before the riders actually tackle the cross-country with their horses, they will have walked round it about 3 or 4 times. So, on the Tuesday, just before the competition began, Lucinda Green, with the aid of the Mitsubishi helicopter, had a really good look at the course.
This is the first of the 29 fences of this year's Badminton Horse Trials. Big enough, needs jumping, quite upright. I'd be careful how I did it. This year, and it's the first year that I can remember, Hugh Thomas, the director, has decided to send the course the same way around as last year, in other words, clockwise. And the reason he's done this is because he believes the course is slightly easier clockwise, and he wants to get it into a pattern whereby every Olympic and World Championship year, the course will therefore be running in the easier direction. Easy, I'm not so sure.
The lamb creep is a familiar sight and allows horses and riders to get going, as does the pheasant feeder. But the approach to this is slightly obscured by a large oak tree, so riders must make up their minds as to how to approach this one. No room for any indecision, even at this stage.
This is fence 4, the cross question, and it's when you arrive here that you know you're at badminton. It's straightforward, rails and ditch, but it's a big, big ditch. Course builder's been kind, he's put a ground rail there, which will just help them get up in the air. And because the first 3 fences have been nice confidence-giving fences, I think this will ride well, but you'll really have to motor around the corner and keep going. If you really want to chicken it, and quite honestly, if you're going to do it at fence 4, you might as well give up. You can go right down the back there, come in this ditch, duck, and come along here and pop out over this rail.
The British Equestrian Olympic Fund fence provides an unusual, if not startling, approach to the traditional quarry complex. The quarry wall is jolly solid and has a large drop. Then the out, a log pile, is at the top of a sharp incline. Jumped well enough last year, it's just a question of keeping the engine going. For those who didn't fancy this or haven't jumped the first wall well, there's a time-wasting alternative on the left over another log pile. The keeper's oxer, maximum height and width, and a beautifully built fence. It's extremely solid, but there is a much smaller alternative on the left.
We're coming up now to the Fairbanks drop, number 9. This was the site of the old fence modelled on a Los Angeles fence 7 years ago. It's pretty different now, and there's quite a number of alternatives. It seems to me that the quickest route here is in fact the easiest. Keeping on the right hand side, it's a mighty big drop. I think it's 6 foot 6, 7 foot drop, but it's a good decent fence off with not too sloping a landing. There are other alternatives, other possibilities. One of them is here, a steeper slope down to the rail, ending up having the rail exactly the same height as it would be if you took off there, but about 2 foot less drop, which might entice some people to go that way. A slower route up here with no height to jump, a tiny bit of a spread, a couple of feet, but a terrific drop. I wouldn't be too keen on that myself. The very slowest way is right the way around the edge there, into the dip, over a fairly straightforward, not small, oxer, and away, and probably 8 or 9 seconds wasted if you do that way. But this route, I really wouldn't like. It's a long way down. This is the first really serious combination on the course. Given that they've jumped the quarry all right, that gives you a bit of a lead into this, but it's completely blind. The horses don't see the big steps down until they're literally about to take off for this very narrow panel, and their instinct could easily be to say, oh, there's not room to land, I'm going to fall down the steps, and they'll stop or run out. There is an easier route. It'll take a long time as usual, going over the right-hand side, stopping and then turning back. You've still got the problem of 3 steps followed by a very narrow fence at 10E. Ooh, it's quite a long way down. It's going to be very easy for the horse to jolt right out of balance. And it's quite hard to maintain your balance and therefore keep the horse in balance and on a line. If this was a nice broad fence, it would be a lot easier. So here comes the fence that Badminton's famous for, the lake. This year preceded by a couple of Mitsubishis and followed by an awesome drop into the lake itself. This fence I look upon as a bonus. It helps you because it sets you up for the lake fences ahead. Which angle you actually jump it at depends on which side of the lake fence you're going to try to jump. I don't see much alternative if you want to go straight through this lake with as little time as possible than angling this very big rail in slightly, which could cause a problem because if you hit a fence on an angle it turns you over much quicker. Riding on a left-handed half circle to get out at 13. Now that would be the route for the brave, the bold and the sure. I think the less able, or rather the ones that are not so experienced, would find this an easier route in, a much smaller fence, but facing the wrong direction. They've got to do a wide loop out to give them a decent approach. It's no good just cutting in. Land, stop, turn, and then either go out by the red flag or come out a very much longer route up by the white flag, which will entail up the bank, round the back of the rails, and then over by the white flag on the furthest fence.
The shooting butt is very big when you look at it from the ground, but the horses seem to make pretty light work of it, and in fact it's a bit of a breather before the coffin. This comes after a longish gallop through the wooded park. You've got to go pretty slowly on the approach here, because as you come to it, the horses only see the ditch at the very last moment. You really have to know your horse well. The alternative wastes a lot of time by jumping the right-angled wing on the in and the out. The Wiltshire corner has to be jumped very accurately if you're taking it on the right-hand side over the point. The alternative involves trotting over a bridge, jumping a small gate, then a sharp right-hand turn to a fairly easy corner. And so to one of the real badminton classics. You can see from the helicopter just how big that ditch is and how little room there is for error. You really do need a bold, honest horse if you're going to take the short way. It's round about here that you judge just how much energy your horse has got left, and indeed how much energy you've got left. There's a lot of problems to come still, but you're well over half the way round. You don't want to make any mistakes now. And that's why it's vital that you've walked all the alternatives. And if your horse isn't going just as boldly and as energetically as you'd hoped, you know what to do.
This is a fair question. We've had this rail before in front of the water, but we've never had the bounce rail coming from this way. It's big, but I think it'll jump well. It's quite a short distance in here, which I think is right. It's just over 4 yards, about 13 feet, because the horses are going to be backing off the water. There is an alternative if you don't want to take the 2 fences straight ahead, but I'm not at all sure that it's possible. You can take a small arm of this front fence, come between the two, turn in a very tight area, otherwise you go out of the penalty zone, come back into this with only literally 2 strides of canter. And I'm not altogether sure that a horse that isn't bold enough to do this will in fact do that off 2 strides of canter. It's late in the course. I think there's a good chance that it'll jump well. Hope so.
The first Lackington Lane crossing is unchanged. It's a bank up with the rails and drop off, but I've seen horses stop on this bank. The 2 traditional hedges at Centre Walk have to be jumped. The distance between them is a bit awkward. It's a short 4 or long 3, and they always seem to catch 1 or 2 people out. At Tom Smith's walls, only one of the walls is flagged this year. It's the quickest by far to jump the corner, which a lot of the more experienced combinations will take. The alternative has been made even longer than last year by the introduction of a fence built parallel to the wall, which riders have to go all the way round to avoid. The long way at the second Luckington Road crossing involves jumping a gate and then hard left to a straight line across the road. The 2 hedges on the left are at an acute angle. It is the quickest way, but terribly difficult line to get right. The Sigma Trakehner should jump well on the right-hand side, but this fence is late on in the course and horses will be getting tired, so some might prefer the alternative. It's arguable, though, whether jumping a slightly bigger fence, as it is on the right, takes more or less out of a tiring horse than jumping 2 slightly smaller obstacles, especially when one of them's a ditch. It's all too easy, then, to lose that all-important rhythm. Hugh Thomas has built an imaginative new fence here surrounding this tree. It's been built as 3 diamonds, and from the helicopter we get an excellent view of exactly how it's laid out.
This is the last complex on the course, and the horses are going to be tired now. There's quite a lot of alternatives. It follows the sign of the Mitsubishi logo, but there's only one really practical one, I believe, which is the corner here, stop, ruin the flow, pull up, turn left, and the corner over by the red flag on 26C and D.
The Ha-Ha is certainly a pretty interesting looking new fence, and one that will give the riders something to think about, especially at the end of the course.
Well, you certainly don't want to do that. If you come straight for the middle, it's optically a big fence. It actually only measures 10 foot, but because it goes away like that, it makes it look unjumpable. I'm tempted to think that if you kept on coming at this stage of the course, the horses would just go from side to side. But if a couple of people mess it up, I think we might find the rest of the field won't risk it, and they'll go across a number of these alternatives, which basically requires you to pull right up and ruin the flow, which is difficult enough on a tired horse. Jump in, stride, jump out. I think given the horsepower, I'd like to crack on at the middle.
The stick pile, in fact, measures the maximum dimensions. It's imposing and should be respected.
This will be the most welcome sight to anybody that gets here, the last fence. This is the first time in 20 years that I could make friends with the last fence. Up until now, it's been a very upright, broad fence under a roof. But this one shouldn't cause any problems.
Sadly, as cross-country day dawned, the weather took a serious turn for the worse, making riding conditions extremely unpleasant. With sudden, heavy overnight rain, the going, from being nearly perfect on Tuesday when Lucinda went around the course, had become incredibly slippery, and through the sea of mud and umbrellas, the dramas started to unfold. It's so often forgotten that before competitors start the daunting cross-country course, they have to do nearly 10 miles of roads and tracks. This is very tightly timed, and riders have to judge it carefully so they don't incur time penalties. and don't waste too much of the valuable energy needed for the cross-country. The roads and tracks sandwich a 1.75 miles of steeplechase, which is designed to test the horse's ability to really gallop. Ridden at about 26 miles per hour, almost racing pace, it can really sap the energy of both horse and rider. Then, with only a short 10-minute halt, they have to tackle nearly 4.5 miles and 29 very solid fences. As always, the crowd gathering round the lake, eagerly awaiting the first competitor. Experience, the requirement for the pioneer of any big cross-country course, and certainly true at Badminton in these conditions. And probably few better people than the Dutch rider Eddie Stipper on the former Duncan Douglas horse Knight Rider to get things underway. The riders would have been watching very closely at this stage just to see how the weather had changed the conditions. Quite interesting to reflect that a large amount of this field would not have experienced conditions like this. But despite the conditions, a big crowd awaited the first major test, the quarry. A combination which proved quite forgiving last year, which tends to give horses and riders confidence if they do make a mistake. And there's an example of it. The great double Olympic champion, bidding for a third timer, of course, on Face the Music, his Burley winner, former racehorse. 2 chances for the title for Mark Todd. Well, the coffin always used to be one of the Badminton bogies, but almost you walk past it as one of the easier fences this year. Knight Rider nips neatly through. These days it's very difficult for new riders to emerge in this very professional scene. But Charlotte Hollingsworth, one that is certainly emerging as very capable talent, riding Sir William Aldous' solo performance. They made their mark in Buccalo in October 1991, but this is their first major test. Just showing signs of struggling. She'll need to keep her nerve. Eddie Stipper to the Wiltshire corners. Already drives to the corner, and there is the first glimpse we have of the weather conditions having an effect. Good to firm on Friday night, and the rain has made it treacherously slippery. You really can't afford to be too bold. So he has to play safe, and I wonder whether that'll change the face of the competition with seeing that. Certainly not looking heavy at this moment as the Kiwi comes to the lake. Very easy to go swimming here if you don't have the control and accuracy. And who better to watch through it? Perfect piece of riding from Mark Todd, really on song. You can see the rain driving down as the Beaufort staircase shows the agility needed. Solo performance is up to it. Well, that would be a welcome sight for course designer Hugh Thomas. To have the first one home, always important, and certainly in these conditions, vital. However, due to a fatal fall for Face the Music, attempting the corner, the red flag is changed, eliminating that section of the fence and casting a cloud of gloom over the occasion at that stage. However, young Frances Hooper, being caught at the Beaufort staircase, just not having the accuracy and control, and getting 20 penalties for her error. Charlotte Hollingsworth, who's kept very cool so far. Clear as she comes to the Vicarage V, not taking the risk of the corner. very often the rather ill-defined banks of the ditch prove difficult. Nearly caught Charlotte.
So jumps that in two parts. There is the alternative, the straight-through route.
Another of the young talents on display, Philip Clapham, riding the counts.
And then straight at the
Impressive young man across country.
Charlotte Hollingsworth opting for the longer route.
Now inside the last mile, solo performance.
That's over the gate.
And Charlotte riding very sensibly
Lane crossing.
as Francis Hooper and Well Done come to the Vicarage V. Just the 20 penalties for them so far.
Well Done at the Vicarage V.
Whoa.
But takes a look and
Wonder whether he can smell the ditch. A rather stupid 20 penalties for that. It'll surprise her. And this time makes nothing of it. Very, very frustrating for Francis Hooper.
Well Done at the Vicarage V.
As one of the great old favourites, Sir Barnaby gets underway with Pippa Nolan. Pippa's thought of retiring this great campaigner, but he's had a tremendous spring, so she thought she'd give him one more try. Very big heart, but he's going to need it. Philip Clapham, oh, going across the ridge. Ah, it's quite narrow. The horse wasn't quite sure where he was going, missed his footing, and I'm afraid it's 60 penalties. And he hasn't even jumped the fence. Those famous colours of Ginny Lang on the lovely grey Welton Houdini. Second in Saumur last year, but this is certainly his biggest test. Rather a green jump at the first of the walls, but Ginny very quickly gets him back together. And again, not just 2 foot perfect there, but they'll have to settle down as Pippa Nolan comes, and really, Sir Barnaby is not enjoying it. Pippa's really having to ride him as they now come to the lake. The two Mitsubishi pickups. A dozen strides away from this lake, and if they go straight on, they go into deep water, they have to turn and then jump that V out, requiring extreme accuracy and control. The longer route means less of a drop, but a very, very time-consuming route, adding precious seconds. But Sir Barnaby and Pippa going the direct route, turns well, drives for the step, and gets the point. Certainly jumping better than the pundits thought. Welton Houdini at the Fairbanks. And most people, as you predicted, Lucinda, going down the right-hand side. Whoa, slips. Well, Lucinda, did the going cause that?
Oh dear, it looks awfully to me as if it did. But why did he slip? I wonder if he was just being a bit too bold and then suddenly saw the drop, backed off a bit, and when he went to back off, he skidded. I think, yes, he's just saying, let me go, Ginny, let me go. And then he says, whoa, what is that? And then it's impossible for him to get himself out of that.
And he's over the corner.
Pippa Nolan and Sir Barnaby, he's found it terribly heavy weather this course. He's just over halfway now, struggling through the coffin. He's a little chap, and his heart is huge, but I just feel he finds his Badminton fences too big. Tina Gifford, her first Badminton, 2 horses, both 13-year-olds, both horses she's had since the beginnings of their career. Good girl this, Josh Gifford's daughter. Pippa Nolan and Sir Barnaby, he just says he's had enough. He's the 3rd from home now, and he's been clear up till here, but I think he finds his Badminton fences just one over the top for his undoubted talent. He's got a big heart, this little horse, but he's 15 now. And he gets through and he gets on home, clears the last 2 okay. Ginny and Welton Houdini
Beaufort Staircase, fence number 10.
This is a class act from a horse that's had a fall like that. It seems to me that he's actually listening to Ginny better now. He might be better for that lesson. Lucinda and Arctic Goose. This is a very strong horse. Interesting to see how her breaks are. Tina Gifford again, Smithtown lad. Very brave riding into the lake, quite fast, but didn't seem to pay any consequences. And now this wretched double back turn that's necessary if you're going to go in and out the slow way. There's a bit of a catch here, though, which is just what I think Tina has done, is cross her tracks from where she entered the first element. Lucinda Murray, Arctic Goose fairly springing down there. Not a moment's hesitation. Very brave. And now Sarah Kellard and Hallo Henry, who was not enjoying his day. I don't think he likes this sort of ground. And he's not been that hot on ditches in some of his career too. That was just one too many. He already had a stop at the fourth. Lucinda again, Arctic Goose. Skidding badly down that bank. Lucinda somehow doesn't go off the back end, stays with him. Wearing a Kimblewick, this horse, which seems to be the bit that Lucinda has found most successful with him. But from what I can see, it's beginning to run out on him. It's not as effective as it was at the beginning of the course. Nothing wrong with that, though. Strong riding from Rachel there and High Strider. Ooh, mistake up out of that bank, and that's what happens. You have no margin of error if you come out the quick way.
A bit unlucky going in.
Fighting going on to keep him steady for this bounce into the water. Very, very nicely done. And from France, young rider and junior team gold medalist. Eastern Newport obviously not quite used to going over bridges and then jumping gates at the end of them. Lucinda coming into the right angle of Tom Smith's walls. Beautiful stride, lovely. Make this fence look easy. I've never dared jump it yet. I think I shall have to one day. And Tiny Clapham and brother Jack, who's had a year off and definitely found this ground very, very hard to cope with. He slipped up before he ever got to the British Olympic fence, as you can see from Tiny's breeches, and he just slipped again on the turn there, never even approached that fence. His particular stride obviously just doesn't cope with slippery ground. You can see still how much anchoring Lucinda's having to do. And this is where, if you watch very closely, she does actually do a full circle inside the penalty zone. There she crosses her tracks, but she had the luck that we all need, and the fence judge did not see it. Nobody complained, and she got her clear round. We all need that luck.
So in the start box, Lynn Bevan, equally at home in the world of top show jumping as she is here at Badminton, riding Horton Point, a great campaigner around here. Winner of 2 individual European Young Riders medals. So Arctic Goose taking quite a strong hold as Lucinda Murray trots to the ha-ha. Determined, oh, nearly falls through it. Really gets the horse right out of his rhythm at that stage of the course. As Lynn Bevan comes through the quarry. Just half a semblance an error, but sits very well. As Paddy Muir comes down to the Sigma Tracana. Oh, and she too, I'm afraid, slipped. And down they came. They've gone so well on this homebred horse. Her record spoiled because over the years she's had a very, very good record here, but not this year. So this is the shooting butt that Lynn Bevan is coming to. A very big fence, but these days would be regarded as one of the easy fences. Lucinda Murray and Arctic Goose jumped the last. They've really performed well. They've come of age. First came to prominence at Blenheim, and now they look set to come into the prize winners here at Badminton. Former badminton winner Jane Holderness-Rodham. Oh, on Ballon Green, and they slipped, trying to turn in the water and get a major ducking. Jane, the chairperson of the selection committee, and at the moment I would think that'd be a long way from her mind. Lynn Bevan ridden a very sensible round on Horton Point. Hasn't pushed him too fast, he's just kept steadily on. He always keeps jumping. She rides quite long, but in this driving rain that may be an asset to her, as she pops across the Vicarage V and makes it look a pony club fence. Whoa! Neil Fox really attacking the lake and nearly gets a ducking for his troubles, but he saves the day. Now this is the route where you can very easily cross your tracks and get a technical 20 penalties. I think he's all right. And he's dry-ish.
But decides not to jump the angle of the second Lackington Lane crossing up to the gate and the straight on option, which is...
Lynn Bevan's got a very good eye for a stride, and that comes from show jumping. As Alison Brooke in her second attempt at badminton with King's Court. Whoops! And it might be her second attempt, but I'm afraid it's probably where it's going to end. King's Court has said, that's enough for me, Mum, I'm off home. Well, courage is the name of the game for both horse and rider. Jules Pons from France. Oh, and he misses his jerk coming out and pays the penalty. Dirty breeches for the Frenchman. With all action around her, Lynn Bevan keeping very cool, calm and collected. Lovely piece of accurate riding in these conditions. As Watkins and Tanya Cleverly come through the quarry. A horse that's always promised so much. Never quite delivered. Oh, sit tight, Tanya. Get the yoo-hoo on, and she has. Still clear, would you believe? Now she's got to collect herself together and kick on. Michaela Pullman with her first ride at badminton, special bet, a very brave young lady, very determined too. She's showing a lack of experience there, not reacting to the situation quick enough and having to correct her mistake. That gave her 20 penalties. '20-year-old Emma Spear with Lochner Tusa. Rather misses his stride. Emma's trying to pick up the knitting. And that gave her 20 penalties.
20 penalties at the final element of the Burton staircase for Lochner Tusa.
Speed of reaction there, very important. One of the important attributes of a good cross-country rider. And here's another example of a rider, this time using her head. Had a nasty moment at the quarry. Watkins would have lost his confidence, so Tanya very sensibly went for the easy option to settle him down. Emma Spear will have to drive on here to make the distance, and doesn't. It's a long distance there for a bounce with the water behind, but she too has walked her course using her head and goes for the alternative. Her ambition will be to get round. She's never done that before. Meanwhile, Tanya Cleverly will be looking to impress the selectors. She's played it well so far. She just keeps going. She might well get into the prize money for the first time. But she's taking a risk here. Is that a sensible move? Across the diagonal, it's very difficult and pays the penalty. I would think Tanya would really be kicking herself because she needn't have taken that risk. Meanwhile, Nocturel, and he's got his line wrong. You have to be very accurate. Whoa. Now it's going round the houses. And there is Arctic Circle and Joanne Bishop knocking our bee off fence for 6. That'll be a big disappointment because this is a very, very good cross-country horse, as indeed is the Oxford Don for the United States. Whoa, hesitates, and he who hesitates is lost. Not only lost, but soaked. At this stage of the competition, no one had really taken a grip of it, and no one had really made the course look easy at all. The conditions were proving difficult, and one began to wonder whether in fact we were going to get an impressive performance. So, undoubtedly, Mary Thompson and King William set out with the greatest pressure they've ever had on them. Well, the early situation showed that Mary and King William looked in positive mood. He certainly had the class, and really today is all about temperament of horse and rider. They've both got the ability. Can they provide it in these difficult conditions? Willowbrook Lad and Sue Hill, their second badminton. They won't have faced conditions like this. True to say now, at this stage, the conditions not quite so slippery. The horse is beginning to make a print, which very often means that it's a little more secure for the horse. No slipping there for King William, looking very self-assured. As Sue Hill comes through the quarry complex. In these conditions, the horse only has to lose his feet and loses his confidence with him. Not entirely foot perfect, but they're safely through. Mary Thompson, King William, playing safe at the lake, and that's a reflective decision for her after her unfortunate fall in the last water of the European Championship. And there you see Mary having done her homework. She really didn't cross her tracks. True professional Mary, she really doesn't leave a stone unturned. Young Scottish girl, Miranda Tulloch Matterhorn, her first attempt. Just over halfway round, and one was beginning to wonder whether we were going to see a performance that lifted this badminton back into the level that we've come to expect. The hallmark of class at this level is the ease at which it is achieved. And at this point, both Mary and King William were not only enjoying it, but making it look truly easy. Well, Matt Ryan has not only evented in Great Britain, but he's raced as well, so he will have known something about these conditions. Whoa, old-fashioned seat, but it's safe. Nothing old-fashioned about the Sigma Trakehner for King William. As we see Matterhorn at the Vicarage Pond. Oh, again, Miranda showing her inexperience, driving on, not quite on the right stride, slipped, and then sadly refused. But sitting very tight, and again showing the determination which badminton is all about. At this stage, The Australian was really taking the challenge on, really attacking. Now, could he put the pressure on Mary Thompson? Suddenly the competition began to take on a new look. Combination from the north, David Bartram with Special. And a magnificent sight at the last was there for everyone to see. Horse and rider having completed a truly brilliant round and making it look easy. Not only did they finish in style, but they finished full of running. Meanwhile, Sue Hill and Willowbrook Ladd were making a very good stab at this difficult badminton.
Willowbrook Ladd and Sue Hill over the Wiltshire corner now, fence 16.
Slips, but a good piece of confidence from horse and rider get them through. And as so often happens, a good clear round lifts everybody.
Over the third, Khyber TikTok is over the open staircase at 10.
Sue Hill and Willowbrook Ladd going very well indeed. Not one of the stars, but proving that the course is still very jumpable despite the conditions. Well, Sue Hill might be trying to win the badminton trophy, but this man is. He's really attacking. Very positive riding. He knows Mary Thompson has gone well. But although he's gone well, he's not quite as quick as King William at this stage. But if he can maintain the pace, he will indeed go very, very close to her. And of course, we've still got the final phase, the show jumping to come. Right in touch, the Australian Matt Ryan.